Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Prospect Power Hour with my co-host Ryan Lippert. I'm Josie Young. How are you doing, Ryan?
Not bad. Just join another week. We're in the middle of fall now. Weather's changing, but we're in the middle of football season, both college and professional. So it's an exciting
Mm-hmm.
time, at least for me and football fans.
Yeah, I'm sorry, folks. We had to take a little bit of a break last week. We had some personal issues going on my end, so we apologize if you missed us. Ryan, what'd you think of the college action last week?
So interesting. For me, obviously being a Kentucky fan, I went to the exciting game. Last weekend, Kentucky upset Florida, which was huge. Got to see the packed house, storm the field, all that fun stuff. Knocking it off, and then hopefully they'll get to continue in their game against LSU, which we'll talk about a little later. They're undefeated and in the top 15 now, so that's exciting. And then you had they did the big time win, and the Bearcats look hot right now. They're really making their place for the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Beat the dust off of Wisconsin, so they made a statement in the Big Ten. Some teams that top 10, top 15 discussion really make their statements, and then Georgia also had to knock off their high horse, and then Alabama beating Ole Miss. So you got team kind of make their statement win, so to say, this past weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I think everyone else is playing for third place in the country because it's clearly that Georgia and Alabama are the top two teams. Really. Um, yeah. Unfortunately for Ole Miss, Alabama brought their popcorn. Um, yeah, it's unfortunate for Oregon last week that Pac-12 decided to bring their worst referees. Uh, Notre Dame obviously lost to Cincinnati. Luke Fickell's always the hot coaching candidate again this year. So, and it's good. It's not quite 2007 levels yet of panic every week, but we're getting close to it, I believe.
I definitely agree there. It's besides the top two teams, the big top teams, three and four in the college football playoff are wide open, and then every other spot, the people rankings, there's several teams that could really step in and take those spots.
Hmm. Yeah, it's of course it hmm. Of course, we had Tennessee that's slowly rising under Josh Heupel. We'll talk about them a little later on in the show tonight. They beat the brakes off of Missouri. Of course, Missouri was once the ascending program in the rough and tumble SEC East. But of course, yeah, it's been a crazy year so far outside the SEC. It's prospect wise. So on to this week's action. We have our first big game. That'll probably determine a bunch of playoff spots. The Red River. Excuse me if I can speak correctly. The Red River rivalry, or now Red River shootout between Oklahoma and Texas and Dallas every year. So, what do you think of this one?
Oklahoma, they're one of those teams that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
fighting for one of those last two playoff spots. Uh, say he's a favorite for the Heisman. He hasn't lived up to his full hype coming into this year, but still conversation. He's still in conversation as he was uh, crowned as kind of a pre. But he's kind of off for me. I still don't have him in my QB1 or 2. That will on me. Right, he has the tools. He has some excitement to him, but he's just got to put it all together and be. Um, he's got what around him too. He got the running back duo and Eric Gray and Kendi Brooks. And then you had two more and so, and then the tight end Austin Stogner. So he's got some guys around him to really. Lincoln Riley's been there, and then
Mm.
defensively they got a few guys too. They got and then two senior defensive linemen, Perrion Winfrey and Isaiah Thomas, have been solid players. On they to be drafted, so they're a well-rounded team. I don't think they compete with Alabama or they have what it takes on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think, but they're definitely So then you'll have Texas on the other hand, who's kind of been up and down. You got on this running back. I mean, he should be RB1 when his time comes, unless somebody passes him. And Xavier Worthy, who's a true freshman, that I think are going to be notable to watch over the next year or two. And then DeMarvion Overshown, a linebacker. I like him a lot. Texas has some guys, but I got Oklahoma beating them in the rivalry, and Big 12. It's been crazy this year, but I just don't see anybody knocking them off.
Yeah, it's just I don't think Oklahoma's defense they're capable of putting games together where they're unbeatable, and then in the same game they're capable of blowing the lead, even though they're ahead by like 20 plus points in the fourth quarter. It's just what it is at this point for the Oklahoma defense for whatever reason. But Alex Grinch, their defensive coordinator, he's probably one of the best defensive minds in the country. It's just for whatever reason, it's just Oklahoma can't put it together on defense. I think, like you said, Spencer Rattler. I think he's probably QB3 right now on my big board. But for Oklahoma's off defense, Nick Bonito, he could probably be one of the best edge prospects. But overall, he could probably play off-ball linebacker at the next level if he can, transition that way. But defensively, they also have Delarian Turner-Yell. He's been there forever, it seems like. But Bonito is probably one of the best prospects they have. I think he's probably right now, if he's strictly speaking as the edge, he's probably edge 4 on my board right now. But yes, speaking of Texas, they probably should have stuck with their quarterback right now, currently as a starter. Uh, Casey Thompson, he has a rich bloodline. His family's full of Oklahoma Sooners, believe it or not. So this rivalry, means extra special to him. But like you said, Bijan Robinson, he's a true sophomore this year, so next year he'll definitely be RB1. I think for his backup, Roshan Johnson, he's quickly gaining steam as a running back next year. I think if he stays around, but Jordan Whittington is another receiver, so I don't know. We'll see. Of course,
Yeah,
Texas defensively, they have Tavondre Sweat. I think he's a true junior this year, but he's been in the program a lot. He's been off and on, flashing a little bit as a defense tackle prospect. I think. Offensive line wise, if they're of course they're trying to replace Sam Cosme. They have a couple of injuries this year, so that limits Sark and what he can do on offense a little bit. But yeah, of course Overshawn's the big name here defensively for them. They have a couple of guys in the secondary like Brendan Schooler and Anthony Cook. They're veteran guys that know what they're doing. I think. So I think I'm gonna go against it. I think Texas wins this one by at least 10, but it'll be really close in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think it could be a close game, but it's like a more talented team.
Hmm.
Um, but moving on, it looks like they very sure that's match that I'm kind of excited to see. Yeah, Ole Miss and Arkansas, both teams, they're kind of both obviously, and kind of got knocked down a notch a little bit. Kind of reminded that didn't have to be cheap. But Ole Miss, I mean, although they're not in Alabama, they're not in Georgia. He's been fun to watch this year. He's right in the Heisman conversation. There's been a lot of rounds. In a quarterback that rises somewhere into the late first round just because of his true practice and just maybe some QB needy teams at the end of the first. I mean, he can get it done with his arm. Good in the league as well. He's got Darion Ely, a running back I like a lot as well. Dontario Drummond, a receiver. He also has Jonathan Mingo, but he's dealing with a foot injury. I heard any updates. And then left tackle, they got Nick Broker. He's maybe the early day 3 guy. I mean, he's got some potential there, but he's like wow and intangibles that some of the better offensive tackles in this class have. There wasn't anything on film that really out to me like this is a first round guy, this is an early second round guy, but he's definitely going to be drafted with and then defensively, they got a couple senior D linemen and Sam Williams and Tariqius Tisdale. Next day, they got Kydron Smith, Jake Springer, who came over from Navy, transfer from Maryland, Chance Campbell. That I'm kind of interested to see him play a little bit. But he's pretty good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Ole Miss bounces back after just getting beat down last week at Alabama. So I think, like you say, I think Corral. I think he's in the range of being QB2 off the board right now. Right now, um, I got Ely on my college fantasy team, so I hope he performs well. It's a shame that Ole Miss isn't at full strength, like you said, with Minga dealing with a foot injury. So Broker as well. I think he's a draftable prospect, made day 3 at this point. But I agree with you on Sam Williams. I really like him as a prospect, but he has a little bit of an outfield issue right now that has to be vetted and correctly by NFL teams when we get to that stage in the process. But it for Arkansas, I really like KJ Jefferson. He's not talked about as one of the top QB prospects right now, but he's currently injured. So we'll see how if he's healthy. But Treylon Burke's their star receiver. He's been getting a lot of steam as wide receiver one right now. He's definitely in the first round conversation, I think.
Yeah, I have Burks number one right now. It was between him and Garrison for this season. I like him a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah, it's just I think Burks is the breakout prospect. I think if for this class, he's not like, he's not like coming out of nowhere. Like you said, it's just I think he's breaking out because Brow's offense, is tailored made for receivers to bust up. He has all the physical tools. He's 6'3", 225, and he runs like a 4.5 40, I believe. And so he's definitely a top five receiver in the class. I mean, I have him probably receiver 3 or 4 at the end of the day when my draft boards are due. So it's gonna be interesting to see which offense can click the fastest, because it's definitely gonna be a shootout. It's not gonna be like a defensive struggle. So uh yeah, what are your predictions for this one?
Like Ole Miss, Arkansas, I feel like might have got broken last week. They got you know, but I think that might have a chance to carry over this week. And Arkansas are going to have to, their defense is going to have to show up. They got the 3 senior linebackers, time, and then Jalen Catalon, the sophomore safety that's had a fantastic year. And that I like a lot. He's going to have to make some plays against the pass to keep them in this game. And I tell them that it'll be a close game, but I think I like Corral bouncing back and leading the team to victory.
Yeah. I think Arkansas has this one, but it's gonna be really close. I think no more than 6 points in this one, either way.
I
So
think it's going to be a 1-score game.
yeah. So that's a noon game on ESPN for those wondering about the schedule. So moving on to our next game on the noon slate, on Fox Sports 1, it's gonna be West Virginia at Baylor. That's a low key intriguing game of the day if you're interested in the fantasy or investing, shall we say, in that kind of stuff. So what are your thoughts on that one?
West Virginia, they're a team this year. And just kind of up and down. They got the though. Jared Deggy at quarterback. He's been playing for the times, and they've suffered some tough losses this year. I really like running. He's better on the team. And then defensively, they got two interior D linemen, Dante Still, Dave some point, Key Messidor as well. He's a younger interior defensive lineman, and safety from New Hampshire, and Scotty Young, the safety slash outside linebacker. That's a little bit, but Baylor, I think they're gonna have the advantage here. He's playing quarterback yet an interception yet. I mean, he doesn't jump off the table with his numbers or anything like that. I mean, like I said, no interceptions. He's doesn't take as many risks. They're kind of uh, revolve around their 2 running backs this year, 2 senior running backs, Abram Smith and but still gets a lot of carries and has started a lot of games for them this year. He's a great year for them. Riley Tejada at corner, and then Terrell Bernard at linebacker. He's been from the in the game. So if he comes back, then that's a big returning guy in uh, season process this year. I was looking at guys before the season, he's like that. Right. It was interesting to see what they can get out of him the rest of the year as he tries to improve his draft stock.
Yeah, I think both teams are coming off emotional losses that were really close in the fourth quarter, but Baylor particularly, they were in it really late at the end. Unfortunately, until they threw a really bad pass on fourth down late last week against yeah, I want to say I would against yeah, it was Oklahoma State last week. It was on the road, but yeah, I think Baylor pulls it out at the end, but I really like for West Virginia. I really like Letty Brown as one of the top five running backs in the class. Of course, I love Steele, like you said. I think he's a borderline day three, day two pick for me right now. So Letty Brown's probably one of the best running backs I like in the class right now. So I think I want to say since it's at Baylor, but both teams they play similar styles of ball. But I think it's at home, so I think Baylor pulls it out by 7.
And the advantage being at home and
Mm-hmm. Of course, moving on to the biggest game or the set or yeah, I'll say the biggest game of the weekend. You know, the Deep South oldest rivalry, Georgia at Auburn on CBS at 3:30. Yeah, so it's one of the biggest rivalry games. Auburn's, of course, coming off that emotional win where they finally broke the streak at LSU. Believe it or not, they haven't won there since 1999, which was a fact that really shocked me. You know, I mean, I thought they've won there, you know, a couple of times in the past, you know, but that was a really surprising stat.
yeah. Um, as we said, they're the number 2 team right now. They're stacked. Jake Daniels stepped up nicely in his place. Has played well for them at quarterback, and then they got they two really three guys. They got your Zamir Wyatt and James Cook, but Kendall Milton since I'm running. I think three of those are names to watch. And then they got Jamari Sawyer on the O line at left tackle. I love Jordan Davis at nose tackle. He's a stud. Tackle as well that should be drafted pretty highly.
Hmm.
Probably it's good for them. They got 3 linebackers that are very good in the Kobe Dean, Nolan Smith. Yeah, Darion Kendrick at corner, the Clemson transfer, and then Lewis Klein, who's probably one of the hardest players in the that defense is scary. I mean, I've been saying several times, like, while he's playing Georgia defense, they scare me, and they're so good. You know,
Yeah.
but when you got Auburn, I mean, Bo Nix, he's been interesting his year. Times where you watch him, I'm like, why is this guy even a starting quarterback? And then like he's playing in the pocket where it's like, oh, well, okay, where's this been? He's taking up now. He's got some intangibles. I think his draft status is going to determine a team wanting to take a chance on. Yeah, practice squad, like up guy, and try to develop him a little more. And they got the big running back, big. He's got that's played well this year, and then you got former Georgia receiver over there, Demetrius Robinson. He can do this year, and then they got some guys on defense as well. I love their back. Those are both guys that'll be drafted at some point, and then they got two really good corners. And Nehemiah Pritchett as well, and then of course Smoke Monday, one of the best names in college football. Very good for them as well. I gotta say Auburn, they've got top 4 or 5 in the SEC talent. I think Georgia comes in and moves on to next weekend's game.
Yeah, I think Georgia, while they won't, blow them out or anything, it'll be a lot closer than the experts predict. I think it's going to be Georgia by at least 10. It'll probably be less than 2 touchdowns. So how many defensive starters do you think will get drafted in the first 3 rounds for Georgia?
I'd say Davis is a lock.
Hmm.
Kendrick will probably draft it at some point. I'd say Walker and that's 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say at least 7. Have the potential to be. That like I say, that defense is incredible.
Yeah, that defense is full of grown men. I'll say that. Jordan Davis probably might be my most favorite interior prospect this year. He'll probably be the ideal one when I do my big boards at the end of the season. He's that good. Of course,
I can
yeah.
almost promise you he'll be number 1 on my list. Sorry to interrupt, but I
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting where I rank Smith and Dean at the end of the year. They'll be ranked really highly. So it's another guy I have my eye on is Darion Kendrick. It'll be interesting to see where our teams rank him due to his off-field issues at Clemson, where he was dismissed. So of course Lewis Klein or Scene, he's a true junior this year. He's carrying on the legacy of great Georgia defensive backs. I think he's a day 3 or borderline day 3 pick, maybe, but he'll be gone by the middle of 4th round if I had to do the draft this week, or yeah. So I think Auburn has a couple of guys, but I think Bo Nix, he's too much of a wild card for Auburn to rely on to win this one. So Georgia's Georgia's gonna, it's just their defense is too good for Bo Nix to go up against. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see which receiver matches up against Nehemiah Pritchett this weekend. Of course, moving on to the second biggest game of the weekend is probably Penn State at Iowa at 4 p.m. on Fox.
Yeah, for me, I think this is the biggest game. Both of these guys right 3 right now. Whoever wins this game, along with Michigan, they're gonna be the top 2 in the Big Ten. just took it to Maryland last week. I expected Maryland to put up a little fight with, and they just Tyler running back's been a stud for them. Running behind center one for me, Tyler for me. He balls the draft, pulling as a center, getting the his aggression. I think he'll be a starting center at the next level easily. He's been average. I mean, he does enough for them to win. Iowa's always been a ground and pound team. Zach Van Valkenburg at off the edge. He'll probably be a draft. Their team that I've really grown to like a lot this year. Than I actually expected, especially in the bigger games. Noah Kane, a running back, he's very year in the wide receiver who should be,
Yeah. Uh, so where do you have Van Valkenburg at edge on your board?
edge. I'd say somewhere maybe late or 80.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of your classic Iowa type of guys on the line where he's a lot better than what his physical attributes indicate. I think. Um, of course, I think Tyler Linderbaum is probably a favorite for the Remington Award that give out for centers every year. He's one of the best centers in the country, I think. But that's a really tough center class we have this year. Uh, of course, I don't rate Petras, the quarterback, really highly at all. Tyler Goodson's a really good running back for them, but Jack Campbell is another linebacker, classic Iowa linebacker that'll get drafted off his intangibles, I think. But Penn State, I really like Noah Kane. I think he's a redshirt sophomore this year, academically, I think. So he's eligible for the draft. Clifford, I don't rate at all. He's not that good. Receiver, they have Jahan Dotson. He's like he's like their KJ Hamler this year. He's a really dynamic slot weapon at the next level. He's a little bit taller than Hamler, I believe.
Yeah. But I think like at tackle, I think he'll be an early second round guy, and then Mike Miranda, he'll be three. And eventually, they got one of the better secondaries in college football with Joey Porter Jr. and that's been a very, very good trio for them this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joey Porter Jr. I wonder if he has his dad's stare
Yeah.
from way back in the day. Yeah, Tariq Castro feels he's been at Penn State for forever, it seems like. But I think Joey Porter Jr. is a rising prospect in that backfield, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like I said, I've liked Brisker a lot this year at
Mm.
safety.
Yeah, the cornerback class this year is really good.
Yeah.
Who do you have winning this one?
Uh, I mean, even though it's at Iowa, that's be a place to play. But I actually like Penn State in a very close game. I Iowa in this one, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean Iowa's going to hit them. I like they speed and athleticism to overpower Iowa in this one.
Yeah, it's of course we have to factor in the Iowa home magic. So I think, but Penn State's a much better team. But it's a battle of two mediocre quarterbacks. Who's gonna make the more plays from that position. But I think Clifford's a little more talented than Petras at this point. I think you agree.
Yeah.
It's a sad quarterback battle. I think it won't be one of the most intriguing quarterback battles we'll ever see. But it's
No.
going to be one in the trenches, like classic Big Ten. But I think Penn State has just enough firepower to outpower Iowa. But I think it's going to be Penn State by 6. It'll be less than a touchdown.
It's going to be like a field goal game.
Yeah. Uh, it's unfortunate this wasn't a primetime game because Iowa has low key is one of the most underrated home atmospheres, I think.
I would schedule all. This wasn't prime time. I would have loved for this to be a prime time game.
Because it's going up against Georgia and Auburn. So I think at best it's going to be split. The viewership's going to be split between those two games.
Uh, you'll definitely see a split screen out of me for those two.
Yeah. Uh, at least until halftime of the Auburn game, unless they just shock everyone and stay in it until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I don't see that happen.
No. But moving on to the primetime slot, we have a couple of intriguing games there, Of course, the big one that we'll talk about later on. But first up, we have TCU at Texas Tech at 7 p.m. on ESPN. That's going to be a really good game, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm team that have some talent like they can beat you with, but they're not like you're not gonna see that Tech. Tyler Show is out, and they got Henry Allen. Definitely interesting to see what he can do. They've kind of had 3 running backs going this. They, Thompson's been the starter, and then you got Eric is who he's a talented receiver for them that should get drafted, sometime the late day 2, day 3 range. Keep an eye on Colin Schooler, the linebacker from Arizona, and Reggie Pearson Jr. And on the side, you got TCU. I feel like you always say the same names when you talk about them. Got years and done a solid job. They got Zach Evans, the sophomore running back, and then the JD Spielman, a receiver, old Nebraska guy who's been able to. And then we got 2 pretty solid corners in Noah Daniels and Trevius Hodges Tomlinson. Matt watch. And then TJ Carter as well in the secondary at safety. He's another Memphis trainer. I like TCU in a close one in this game. Obviously, quarterback at Texas Tech, just don't know really what to expect from him.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see which quarterback steps up for Texas Tech with Tyler Shuck being out. But I'm really intrigued by the Izukun Mob matchup against. I think Hodges Tomlinson matches up with him. I think I don't want to speak for Gary Patterson at all, but that's going to be probably one of the more low key matchups that wide receiver cornerback matchups of the weekend that most people are going to be talking about, but we'll be watching. Of course, Max Duggan, I don't know what we'll see out of him week to week. So this is Zach Evans. He's probably going to be in the conversation for RB1 next season when he's eligible. Do you think Spielman gets drafted day 3?
Yeah, I think he can get picked up day 3. Be day 3. But I think that'll be, if not drafted, he'll be invited to camp and
Mm,
just working onto the roster for somebody, just depending where he ends up.
yeah. Of course, TCU is coming off that loss to Texas, so it wasn't close, but it was a close game last week. But it's at Texas Tech, so in Lubbock, weird things happen there at night for some reason or another. Um, but given the quarterback issues that Texas Tech is having right now, I think TCU wins this one by at least 10.
Yeah, I'd agree there.
Yeah, but also for Texas Tech, keep an eye out for their offensive tackle TJ Storman. He's under the radar right now, I think. So, Obina Ize is probably for TCU. The tackle is probably one of the more under the radar tackles I like to watch every weekend. He's so physical.
Yeah, I love. He's
He's a beast as a run blocker. But moving on to our next one, of course, the undercard of prime time. Your Wildcats host the Tigers of LSU, who are who are looking to rebound. That of course from that loss to Auburn. So, what do you think of this one?
Kentucky, as a fan, they've exceeded my expectations this year. Tremendous, big, first year. Got a new quarterback, Will Levis, transferred from Penn State. Has been very good this year. He's got a great arm, like great. I like to run the ball. He's like very physical runner. Has a little bit of accuracy. Uh, been passing, which will need to be worked on, obviously at the next level, because he just likes to. He's like everything, which trumps. And then they've got the leading rusher and receiver in the SEC. He reminds me of a ball security issues that he's kind of figured out the past week. Uh, and Wandale Robinson from Nebraska, he's been awesome for us. He deep ball, send him on jet sweeps, use him as a returner. He's kind of an all-purpose guy. The other receiver, he'll be out this game, so it'll be interesting to see with all the attention. Like and Isaiah Cummins is more of their tight end too. That's kind of like I've seen some action. He's a converted receiver. I think Kentucky, they really got one of the better offensive lines in the country. They converted, I think, late first round pick. No later than early second. He's at right tackle. League might be better off at guard. Um, Whoever drafts him, he he definitely be suited switching inside, but I don't think he's a liability at right tackle any means. And then be interesting to see him because his former team, and he's a draftable guy as well. And then underrated, he was guard last year, but they moved him to center, and he's been offensive lineman of the week, and that and I think early day three, I think he's a guy that teams should look at. And Josh Pascal at the end, I think he's a early day three guy. The short right, they were week out. Fortunately, Marquand McCall is going to be out. The big nut guy. I love seeing that. Been high on, so hopefully he can come back soon. And then they got Jaquez Jones back Ole Miss back here, and Issa Corker at safety, and a young guy I like on the defense. He big blocked kick return, true freshman last week against Florida. And they face LSU team that has really underperformed this year. But they could be without a lot of guys this week, which I think from this team. Receivers, Keyshawn Butte and Trey Palmer both practice. And Major Burns in the secondary already ruled out. So it'll be Eli I want to see him and Dale Robinson lined up against each other. I think that'll be a very fun matchup to watch. But I mean, with running with Terrion Price, Davis Price, and the freshman Corey Kiner, so that's very interesting to see if those players, in fact, aren't able to go.
So I have a question for you. Is the cornerback for Kentucky, Cedric Dort, related to Lee Dort of the Thunder?
That I do not know. I'll have to
Yeah,
look into that.
because the last name is yeah, it's the same. I don't know. It's
Huh.
it, yeah.
Maybe.
Like you said, I think Kentucky has probably one of the best offensive tackle duos in the country. I think Rosenthal is probably extra pumped up for this one. Wandell Robinson is probably one of the most underrated, you know, running backs in the game / receiver. I think he could have the potential to be Antonio Gibson at the next level. That's high praise, I think. And of course, Penn State probably picked the wrong quarterback. Levis has been really good for them. Uh, um, what do you think of Yusuf Corker?
I like him a lot. He's as far as drafting, I think he'll be a day three guy.
Mm-hmm.
This year, he could help himself out in the end of the season and through the draft process. But I think he got. I think he first of all, I think he's definitely drafted, and I think he met him kind of do that. They're a little underrated. And you got Chris Westry, found him a role. Right? Ackles with the Jets. I mean, we've had a couple guys that weren't draftable guys and develop themselves and roll, and I think he does the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So who gets drafted higher, if at all, between the two, Rodriguez and Cavassier Smoke?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I don't know that Cavassier will get drafted. He'll get but right, I think the real deal. I think he'll be, probably early through because he's a in between the tackles downhill runner. He makes so I think Benny Snell. He's with the Steelers now. He's not ever going to. He's he'll stick around the league even if it's not in Pittsburgh. But I think there's a pretty similar kind of downhill guy. But Rodriguez has more burst and way hurt him in the draft process, and I think that helps Rodriguez make a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of his case.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that Derek Stingley is going to miss the season or the rest of the season due to his foot injury.
Yeah, I was really especially against Robinson. I was
Mm-hmm.
really intrigued by that.
Yeah. Another defensive guy for LSU that I'm really intrigued by is BJ Ojulari, Aziz's younger brother. He's been coming on for them recently. I think he probably won't be drafted as high as his brother next year, but but we'll see. If Ed Orgeron's still the coach. If believe it or not, I think he gets let go due to the record and the alleged off-field issues LSU's been having recently.
Yeah, uh, like, I think he kind of benefited from having such a good roster. That, I mean, one of their all-around football teams we've seen the past several years,
Mm.
and I think it's showing now. Over your Justin Jeffersons and Jamar Chase, and I mean, so it's tough.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is offensive rookie of the year. I'm just saying. I'm just putting that out there.
Definitely a favorite with the quarterbacks not playing well. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's usually a quarterback award, but this year's quarterbacks is to put it mildly is inconsistent. Yeah,
Mac
I've been advocating that no quarterbacks make the all rookie team, but they have to choose them by default.
when Mac Jones is your best rookie QB prospect, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not good. I'll say that but there's still time. There's still time for Trey Lance to make an impact. I think. Yeah, I think he's getting his first start this coming weekend. I believe.
I'm gonna say
Yeah, but anyway, that's another podcast for another episode down the road. How do you think this game will play out at home for Kentucky?
um, it's gonna here. I saw it once again this week. SEC Nation, it's their game this week. I think the thing we're about the game is that Kentucky might have left all their energy out
Hmm.
there because it be an emotionally tolling game. Like even as a fan, like I was like, oh my god, like I got Uh, LSU just has they have too many missing pieces right now. I think Kentucky wins. LSU, uh, but I think Kentucky wins by anywhere between 7 and 10, and I are going to set up an undefeated SEC East championship game in.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the hangover factor for Kentucky, given the history of what they accomplished last week. Uh, I know I know it's a sad history for you, for given their struggles against Florida.
Yeah,
But I think,
that was probably the first Florida win I've seen in person in my lifetime.
yeah, but Max Johnson is not the best quarterback in the world, as we've seen last week. So I think Kentucky wins by 6. It's gonna be a lot closer than the spread indicates. But I don't think we'll see the fans storm the field for this one. I don't think.
No, it's not the same LSU.
No. Uh, so moving on to the primetime SEC game of the weekend. I'm glad to have that back. Alabama at Texas A&M, 8 p.m.
Yeah, this at the beginning of the season, this one was one that everybody you had saying that A&M is going to be their year. They're going to beat Alabama, but still Alabama as my top dog going into the season, but Alabama is still Alabama. Brian, he looks to be the Heisman front runner. He's been very impressive in his first season. Got John Mechie, a receiver. He'll be probably drafted first round. A very nice addition from him as well. And then you got Brian Robertson at running back, and top 3 tight end, I'd say. Evan Neal, offensive tackle, who'll probably be first offensive tackle this year. And then, I mean, defensively, they got studs all over the board. I like Henry Toa a lot. I like from Christian Harris as well. D line, they got strong safety, probably a day 2 guy. Josh Jobe, probably early day 2. More he'll be drafted when his time comes. A&M, they've got some guys. Zada's done okay stepping in at quarterback, but has fallen off lately, leading to the they're still on the running backs in the country. They got Anaya Smith, the receiver, who's do all conversation. And then Kenyon Green, offensive guard, they'll be drafted highly as well. And then Mark on the D line. And then you got some guys in the secondary: Miles Jones, Leon O'Neal, and Mark guys. Like I said, A&M's got the talent, but they aren't. They got great individual players that'll get drafted very highly, but as far as overall, they eat at home. I think Alabama runs through Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think the spread was 17 and a half, I think. Last time I checked. Uh, but Kyle Field is still Kyle Field, no matter how bad the team is. Um, but the quarterback is definitely an issue for A&M because like I like to call him Zach Calzone. Decent last name, but he's against Alabama. If you don't have a good quarterback, you have no chance at all. None. I really like Spiller. I think he's in contention for RB1 this year. I know that's not shocking, but Anaya Smith, he's been a little disappointing numbers wise this year, but you can attribute that to the quarterback having issues. Um, I think Weidermeyer's tight end one has been tight end one for the past couple years now. No matter who, you know, he would have been tight end one last year if he was eligible. But Kenyon
He,
Green, I think he's been kicked inside the guard for A&M this year. I think from what I've seen, I think he's a guard at the next level.
quick question: would you have picked Weidermeyer over Kyle Pitts last year?
No, but it would have been really close. I think Weidermeyer would have been a first round pick,
Yeah.
maybe top 25, but not on Pitt's level. But Leal is probably one of my most favorite defensive tackles in the class. He's been really good for them in the past couple of years. But Alabama is just a machine. So I don't see any way A&M keeps it within two touchdowns. I don't think. So do you think who's a bigger favorite to win the Biletnikoff, Mechie or Williams?
I'd have Mechie with.
Uh, Yeah, but Williams, I think he plays the Henry Ruggs role for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Of
he
course,
definitely
yeah. Go ahead.
he definitely stepped up and he did a lot in rotation at Ohio State, unfortunately.
Hmm. Yeah, but Billingsley, he's a former receiver, I believe. He has a receiver's type of body at 6'4", 230. So he's not the biggest tight end in the world. I think he splits out wide eventually as an X receiver type at the next level. And at Cameron Latu, he's a red zone machine. He's the bigger of the two at a listed 6'5", 250. So who do you think gets drafted between the two of them?
Who was it?
Yeah, who do you think gets drafted between the two of the Billingsley and Latu?
The who are
Yeah, if I had a choice right now, I think Billingsley gets drafted higher than Latu.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, is covered, uh, Billingsley, I think, is probably I think he's a top five tight end in this class.
Yeah, I know. Here's a really hot take. I think Evan Neal's better than Peni Sewell from last year. He's gonna be OT1 far and above this year.
That is that is a very hot take. I definitely a club his own this past year. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I guess we'll have to see.
So, what do you think A&M keeps it within two touchdowns?
I think Bama covers the spread and then some.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think it's not going to be the most fun primetime matchups, I don't think. But moving on to Pac-12 after dark or slightly evening time, Pac-12. Uh, probably with the Pac-12 South Division decider game, as it was from a couple of years ago. As it turned out, Utah at USC on 8 p.m. at Fox. That's that's a game right in my wheelhouse. I think Utah is coming off a really tragic loss for their running back Aaron Lowe. He was tragically murdered a couple of weeks ago at a house party. That's really unfortunate. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the Lowe family and the Utah program. Uh, he was the recipient of the Ty Jordan Memorial Scholarship, who was I think he was a roommate of Ty Jordan from a couple of years ago. Mr. Jordan, he was shot and killed from last year, I think. So I'm sorry if I break up, but it's really tragic when young people die needlessly. Um, if you read the allegations of what happened to Mr. Lowe, it's really tragic. But moving on, I hope Utah, the community at Utah, heals from this. They take inspiration from this loss. So on the field wise, I think Utah is probably one of the most development premier development programs in the country. But USC, they're going through their own turmoil. They fired Clay Helton not too long ago, so they still have talent.
I see, um, but they've had a lot of ups and downs. You know, kind of I think he's hurt his draft stock a lot this season. Drake London started be thing. Jackson, he'll be another first round guy, edge on defense. Then Isaiah Pullum, and their cornerback two of Chris Steele and Isaac Taylor Stewart. They'll both probably drafted. You know, through a time right now as a program. I'm sure. I mean, so I know it's very tough. Hopefully that community, like you said, that community rally and team, but great to his memory. They lost their quarterback Charlie Brewer that started the season. After losing his job to Cameron Rising, a sophomore transfer quarterback out of Texas. He got TJ Pledger, the running back from Oklahoma, and Theo Howard, another Oklahoma transfer. He had some weapons on offense, and then of course I've mentioned his name many times on the podcast. Devin said, I think he was early second round, and then they got Nephi Sewell beside I think it'll be a very close game. I give USC the edge talent wise in winning this in a close one, but I think it's a very game.
Yeah, it's I think USC is gonna out talent them at at certain point. But Slovis, I don't think he's for whatever reason, I think he's regressed a ton, whether it's due to injury or just uh, dysfunction within the program. I don't think he's a first round pick at this point. I think he's at best a third round pick due to physical measurements and all that stuff. Of course, Drake London, I think he's the best receiver in the West, which isn't a loaded question, I don't think. But Gary Bryant, he's an up and comer for next year. KD Nixon, the Colorado transfer, he's been low key good for them. But USC's offensive line is a mess. There's not a single draftable prospect on that line, sadly. Drake Jackson, the edge, I think he's a first round edge. Chris Steele, he's a walking penalty, unfortunately, from what I've seen this year. So I think Isaiah Polamel is probably the star of that secondary, like he said. But USC has a bunch of young guys that we need to keep an eye on, like Corey Foreman, freshman edge. Uh, Sire Wright, he's gonna be a corner we're gonna need to keep an eye on for next couple of years. But I think USC wins by at least 14 since it's at home. But Oregon State blew them out at home, so I don't know. Who knows? And it just came out that USC's interim head coach Dante Williams he lost his father as well. So our condolences go out to the Williams family. I know that Coach Williams, he moved from Oregon to USC to be closer to his parents from a couple of years ago. So our thoughts and prayers are with him as well as Utah. But yeah, I think that wraps up the schedule for this weekend. So what else do you have, Ryan?
So, being at football season, who we got in the Heisman watch?
I don't know. It's after last week's performance. It's gonna be really close. I think Corral, he's definitely up there. Um, Rattler, if he ever gets it together, he's up there. Bijan Robinson is a contender. I don't know. It's probably going to be one of their tighter races we've seen in a few years.
Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 guys that could be, up, uh, the front runner right now, just because he's led Alabama to where they are right now. Robinson is there. Got to include Corral and Campbell well. I had Kyle Hamilton from that player, but I don't think he'll make the cut anymore. So
Mhm.
uh, it'll be interesting. I mean, we got weeks if players could find their name. I mean, you got a lot about at Pittsburgh. I don't think I would personally have him as a finalist, but people in the
Yeah, I think Pickett's really intriguing as a backup option at the next level. Pittsburgh's been on fire. The as like the guys at the former EDBS site, every day should be Saturday site. I like to say, the Pitt super weapon. Yeah, yeah. Pitt is inevitable. You know. I think Pickett's a day three pick at the next level. I think he's a backup caliber type that'll make a ton of money in that type of role for like several years. So yeah, it's just I don't know, Heisman race is gonna be really close, but Kyle Hamilton, I think he's gonna be a shoe in for the Thorpe Award if he doesn't get injured. He's that good. I think he's gonna be my overall player two on the big board.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. He's top 2 players in this class for me as well.
Yeah.
He's for
So I think that wraps up the weekend slate. Do you have any plans to get up early to watch the London game this weekend?
uh, not a bit that league. In
Yeah,
Lexington, Keeneland, if anybody at home's and listening, to probably some racing and watching college football this weekend. So it'll be a
yeah.
full weekend for me.
Yeah, it's not the London game is probably not the most interesting matchup, I don't think, between the Jets and Atlanta. It's gonna be fun fantasy wise, I think.
Yeah, it'll definitely have some fancy football applications, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah, the Thursday, I think we're gonna get one of the most fun matchups on Thursday night when the Rams go to Seattle.
Yeah, that's a good game. Offense for the Rams has been rolling. They had the another up and coming team, but I think that offense is going to be fun to watch the rest of the year.
Of course, we have we of course you can't avoid talking about Urban Meyer and his issues.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I have no words for that situation.
yeah, that's a situation where I'll honestly be surprised. Like I don't advocate about losing jobs or anything like that, but I'll be very interested to see if he even makes it out of the season.
hmm Because it's just the signals are there for him to go to USC at the end of the season. But given his issues, it's only week 4 that he's having these kind of issues already, dealing with the locker room, losing it, and so Tennessee is who knows? Maybe Jacksonville rallies around the issue and beats Tennessee for
Yeah.
whatever reason. It's going to be that type of game. I don't know. um,
But Myers got a lot going wrong for him. His off the field issues, hasn't
yeah.
won a game. Quarterback and Trevor Lawrence has not shown that yet, so that's not a good look for his head coach.
hmm Yeah. I think that just wraps up of the show. Ryan, where can we find your work, your social media, and all that good stuff?
You can find me at Blitzalytics. I encourage you to go to our website, check out all of our uh, and producers. We have a lot of good stuff coming out on a daily basis. It'll be even more as we are kind of scouting centered, so to say. But we do uh, you can also find me at on Steel City Underground. I'm a beat writer for them. It's a bit fun to write as a Steelers fan, but that's another podcast. Then all my social media are 42. So that's where you can find me.
All right, that's good to know. I also write for Blitzalytics. Yeah, I'll have the QB big board, the hottest big board on the internet these days for the past couple of years and a couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. I also write for Around the Block, atbnetwork.com. For those interested, on a weekly basis. And my Twitter account is 2Yoon to 0Blitz. But that's 2 O's and Yoon. So, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as well. Uh, I don't post often on Instagram or Facebook, but it's still there as a tool if they're not down, as the case was yesterday, I believe. So yeah, keep an eye out for the good work, like you said earlier on Blitzalytics. We're having a ton of good content every day, especially fantasy wise. I know a lot of listeners are, daily fantasy people. So yeah, we have a ton of content scouting wise coming out in the future. So please give us a follow, a like, retweet, share, and etc. So have a good weekend, everybody, and I will see you next time.